The dust never really settles in West Texas. It just waits for the next fight to stir it up again. Tommy Norris had finally carved out a piece of peace after years of dodging bullets, both the real kind and the ones that come wrapped in legal papers and corporate lies. He was done chasing leases, done staring down cartel runners, and done wondering if his family would survive another round of chaos. But peace in the oil patch is always borrowed time. It cracks the moment someone decides they want what you have. And that someone turned out to be Cammy, the last person Tommy ever expected to turn the knife. She had been right there in the middle of it all, watching him battle the big players, nodding along like she was on his side. Nobody saw the calculation in her eyes. Nobody heard the plan she was whispering into the wrong ears. Until it was too late. One quiet morning, while Tommy was pouring his third cup of coffee and pretending the world outside his truck window wasn't already spinning out of control, the first call came in. A land deal he thought was locked tight suddenly wasn't. Papers had been leaked, signatures forged, a rival company, some slick outfit from Houston with deep pockets and no conscience, claimed they owned the rights to the richest patch of dirt Tommy had ever secured. The kind of land that could keep a town alive for a decade. The kind of land that could make or break empires. Tommy laughed at first. He figured it was just another greedy suit trying to muscle in. Then the second call hit, and the third. By noon, lawyers were crawling all over him like ants on spilled sugar. By evening, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing with threats that sounded a lot like promises of violence if he didn't back off. Cammy had started it all right. She had sold him out for a cut that looked big enough to buy her freedom from the life she claimed she hated. She fed the rivals every detail, every map, every handshake agreement, every weakness in Tommy's armor. She thought she was smart. She thought she could disappear into the sunset with her pockets full and her conscience clear. But the oil business doesn't let you disappear. It drags you back into the dirt where you belong. Tommy stood on the edge of that same dusty road he had driven 1,000 times, staring at the rigs in the distance like they were old friends who had just betrayed him his home. His jaw tightened the way it always did when trouble came calling. He didn't yell. He didn't panic. He just lit a cigarette, took one long drag, and whispered to the empty sky, "All right, darling, you wanted a war. Let's see how you like the way I finish it." What Cammy didn't count on was how deep Tommy's roots ran in this land. She didn't know about the favors he had collected over the years from roughnecks, sheriffs, and even a few folks who wore badges but played both sides. She didn't understand that when you cross Tommy Norris, you don't just lose a deal. You lose the ground beneath your feet. The first ripple hit that same night. A truck rolled up to the rival company's field office out near Pecos. No one got hurt, but the message was clear. Tools were scattered, tires slashed, and a single note left on the windshield that read, "Wrong move." Tommy wasn't even there. He didn't need to be. His name alone was enough to make grown men check their locks twice. But the real storm was still building. Cammy was already on the run, hopping from one cheap motel to another, checking her mirrors every 5 seconds, like she could feel his shadow closing in. She told herself it was just business. She told herself Tommy would move on. She had no idea he was already 3 steps ahead, piecing together every lie she had ever told. Back in town, the bars were buzzing with rumors. Old-timers swapped stories about the last time someone tried to pull a stunt like this on a landman like Tommy. They talked about how the desert has a way of swallowing secrets, and sometimes the people who keep them. Tommy sat alone at his kitchen table that night, maps spread out under a single lamp, his dog snoring at his feet like nothing in the world had changed. But everything had. His ex-wife had called earlier, voice shaking, asking if their boy was safe. Tommy had lied and said yes because that's what he does when the wolves start circling. He protects what's his, even if it means becoming the wolf himself. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Each second felt like a countdown. Cammy had lit the fuse thinking she could control the blast. Tommy was the one holding the match now, and he wasn't planning on letting it burn out easy. The next morning brought the first real blood. Not the kind that stains the sand, but the kind that stains reputations forever. A whistleblower, someone Cammy had paid off, turned up dead in his car outside a gas station. Suicide, the paper said. Tommy knew better. He had seen enough stage scenes to smell the setup from a mile away. The rivals were cleaning house, tying up loose ends before Tommy could reach them. But they were moving too slow. Tommy was already in his truck, engine rumbling like distant thunder, heading straight into the heart of the mess. His phone rang again. This time it was Cammy's number. She didn't speak at first, just breathing, fast and scared. "Tommy," she finally whispered, "I didn't know it would go this far." He didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch until it hurt. Then he said, calm as a Sunday morning, "You started it, Cammy. I'm just here to finish what you began." The line went dead. She hung up, but the fear in her voice told him everything he needed to know. She was cracking, and cracks in this business turn into canyons real quick. Tommy drove through the night, the headlights cutting through the dark like knives. Every mile brought him closer to the truth and closer to the kind of choice no man wants to make. He thought about the families depending on those leases, the roughnecks who counted on steady paychecks, the town that would dry up and blow away if the big players won. He thought about his own son, growing up in a world that already tried to chew him up once. And he thought about Cammy, how she had smiled at him across so many tables, how she had laughed at his jokes like she meant it. Betrayal always cuts deeper when it comes from someone you let get close. The radio played low, some old country song about regret and revenge. Tommy turned it up. He wasn't the hero in this story anymore. He was the reckoning. And as the first light of dawn painted the oil rigs in blood-red streaks, he knew the real fight was only beginning. Cammy had opened the door to hell. Tommy was about to walk through it and slam it shut behind him. The land would remember who won. It always did. And right now, every grain of sand in West Texas seemed to be whispering the same thing. Tommy Norris was coming. And when he arrived, nothing would ever be the same. 892 milliseconds. Expert section to section 2. The desert highway stretched out like a black ribbon under the rising sun, swallowing Tommy's truck whole as he pushed harder on the gas. Every mile marker felt like a heartbeat counting down to something ugly. Cammy's words still echoed in his head. "I didn't know it would go this far." But Tommy knew better. She had known exactly what she was doing when she sold him out. She just never expected the fire to burn back toward her so fast. Back in the small office he kept on the edge of town, his old friend Monty was already digging through files, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and angry. Monty had been with Tommy through the worst of the last wars, and he wasn't about to let some city girl with a pretty smile destroy everything they had built. "She fed them the coordinates, Tommy. Every single one. Even the ones we thought were buried deep," Monty growled over the line. Tommy's grip tightened on the wheel until his knuckles went white. Word traveled fast in the oil patch, faster than a sandstorm. By the time Tommy reached the first drilling site, the crew was already on edge. Men who had worked these rigs for years stood in small groups, whispering about the leaked maps and the sudden swarm of lawyers from Houston. One roughneck, a big man named Ruiz with scars from too many bar fights, stepped forward. "Boss, they're saying the lease is dead, that we're all out of a job by next week." Tommy looked him straight in the eye, voice steady as stone. "Nobody's losing their job, not while I'm still breathing. Tell the boys to keep working like nothing changed. I'll handle the rest." But inside, the rage was building like pressure in a well that's about to blow. Cammy had not just betrayed him, she had betrayed every man, woman, and kid who depended on this land for their next meal. Meanwhile, Cammy was 3 states over, sitting in a dimly lit motel room with the curtains drawn tight. Her hands shook as she counted the cash in the duffel bag on the bed. It looked like a fortune 2 days ago. Now it felt like blood money. Every car door that slammed outside made her jump. She kept checking her phone, deleting messages, blocking numbers, trying to disappear. But disappearing in this world is harder than it looks. The rivals she had made the deal with were already turning on her too. One of their men had left a voicemail that morning. Voice cold as ice. "You delivered the info, now stay gone. If Norris finds you first, that's your problem." She pressed her forehead against the cool window glass and whispered to herself, "What have I done?" The guilt was eating her alive, but fear was winning. She knew Tommy. She had seen what he was capable of when someone crossed the line, and she had sprinted right over it. Tommy didn't waste time feeling sorry for her. He pulled into a dusty diner off the highway where the coffee was strong and the walls had ears. An old contact named Loretta, who had worked leases longer than most men had been alive, slid into the booth across from him. "Heard you got stabbed in the back, Tommy. That little Cammy girl?" Tommy nodded once, slow. Loretta leaned in. "She didn't just sell to one company, she sold copies to 3. They're fighting each other now, but they'll team up against you if it means taking the land." Tommy let out a low laugh that held no humor. "Then I'll make sure they stay busy fighting each other." He slid an envelope across the table. "Cash and a list of names. Find out where she's hiding. Quietly." Loretta didn't ask questions. In this business, loyalty still meant something to some people. The sun climbed higher, turning the sky into a furnace. Tommy's phone wouldn't stop ringing. His ex-wife called again, this time more scared than angry. "Our son heard rumors at school, Tommy. They're saying people are coming after you, after us." He pulled over on the side of the road, dust swirling around the tires. "I'll keep him safe. You know I will. Just stay close to home." He hung up and stared at the endless flat land that had given him everything and taken even more. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about protecting what little family he had left, and about sending a message so loud that no one would ever dare try this again. That afternoon, the first real move came. One of the rival companies found their main water truck sabotaged, tires flat, engine ruined, and the word "traitor" spray painted across the side in bright red. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew. Tommy was playing the long game. He wasn't rushing in with guns blazing. He was squeezing them where it hurt most: their wallets, their reputation, and their sense of safety. Cammy, still holed up in that motel, saw the news on her laptop. Her face went pale. She knew this was only the beginning. Tommy was coming, slow and unstoppable, like the pressure that eventually cracks even the hardest rock. As evening fell, Tommy sat on the hood of his truck at the edge of one of his leased fields, watching the rigs pump steadily against the orange sky. His mind raced through every conversation he'd ever had with Cammy, every secret she had pulled out of him with those soft eyes and easy smile. The betrayal cut deep, but it also sharpened him, made him remember who he really was. Not some softened family man trying to play nice. He was a landman. He took what the earth gave and fought like hell to keep it. A new call came in, this one from a blocked number. He answered without speaking. A man's voice, thick with a Houston accent, said, "Norris, you need to back off. We have the papers, we have the law. Walk away and nobody gets hurt." Tommy waited a beat, then replied, voice low and dangerous, "You stole from me. Now I'm taking it back. And if Cammy's smart, she'll run faster. Because when I find her, there won't be enough money in the world to save her." He ended the call and stared into the darkening horizon. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of oil and dust. Something big was coming. Something that would either break him or crown him king of this patch once and for all. Cammy had started a fire she couldn't control. Tommy was about to turn it into an inferno. And the whole oil world was watching to see who would be left standing when the smoke finally cleared. Section 2, 3,987 characters, 895 milliseconds. Fast Section 3. Section 3. The night air turned thick and heavy as Tommy drove deeper into the heart of the oil country, the kind of darkness that makes even brave men question their next step. His truck bounced over the rough back roads, kicking up clouds of dust that glowed red in the taillights. Every shadow on the side of the road looked like trouble waiting to jump out. Cammy's betrayal had opened a wound, and now the vultures were circling. The Houston rivals weren't playing fair anymore. They had lawyers filing emergency papers in Austin, trying to freeze all of Tommy's operations before he could fight back. But Tommy had spent years building quiet alliances in this land, and those alliances were waking up. Monty met him at an old abandoned pump station just after midnight. The place smelled of rust and old oil, a perfect spot for secrets. "I got a lead on her," Monty said, handing over a crumpled piece of paper with an address scribbled on it. "She's hiding near Midland, cheap motel off the loop. Paid cash for 3 nights, but she's scared. Real scared." Tommy stared at the paper for a long moment, folding it slowly into his pocket. Good. She should be. He didn't want to hurt Cammy. Not really, but she had forced his hand. She had turned a business deal into something personal, and in West Texas, personal always ends in blood or broken dreams. Cammy hadn't slept in 2 days. She paced the small motel room, the television flickering with some late-night news report about disputes in the Permian Basin. Her face wasn't on it yet, but she felt like the whole world was closing in. The money in the bag seemed heavier now, like it was pulling her down instead of lifting her up. She thought about calling Tommy, about begging for forgiveness, but she knew it was too late for sorry. The rivals had warned her. If she talked, they would make sure she disappeared for good. Her hands trembled as she poured another cup of cheap coffee. Outside, a car door slammed. She froze, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Was it Tommy? Was it them? The footsteps passed by without stopping, but the fear stayed. She whispered to the empty room, "I never wanted this. I just wanted out." Tommy wasn't far behind. He stopped at a small roadside bar where the roughnecks went when they needed to talk without ears from the big companies. A few familiar faces nodded at him, respect mixed with worry. One old driller pulled him aside. "Heard you got crossed by that woman who used to ride with you. Bad move on her part." Tommy bought a round for the house, not to celebrate, but to remind everyone whose side they were on. "Anybody hears anything about Houston suits sniffing around my leases, you call me first," he said quietly. The message spread like wildfire through the patch. Loyalty still mattered here. Money could buy a lot, but it couldn't buy the kind of trust Tommy had earned over years of keeping his word. As the clock struck 3 in the morning, Tommy's phone lit up with a new threat. A text from an unknown number. Back off or your boy pays the price. His blood ran cold. They had gone after his family now. He called his ex-wife immediately, voice tight. Pack a bag. Take our son to your sister's place up north. Don't tell anyone where you're going. I'll handle it. She argued at first, but the fear in his voice convinced her. Tommy sat in his truck for a long minute after the call, staring at the dashboard. Cammy had started this chain reaction, but the big players were making it uglier than she ever planned. He punched the steering wheel once, hard, then started the engine. No more waiting. Dawn was breaking when Tommy reached the outskirts of Midland. The motel Monty had mentioned sat back from the road, half hidden behind a broken neon sign. He parked across the street, watching. Cammy's car was there, dusty and unmistakable. His jaw clenched as he stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel. This was the moment he had been driving toward all night. Part of him hoped she would have a good explanation. Most of him knew better. He crossed the parking lot slowly, every sense on high alert. A door opened on the second floor. Cammy stepped out, carrying her bag, eyes wide when she saw him standing there. "Tommy!" Her voice cracked. She looked smaller than he remembered, tired and cornered. "Please, just listen. They came to me. They offered more than I could say no to. I was scared of staying in this life forever." Tommy stopped 10 feet away, hands loose at his sides. The wind whipped between them, carrying the distant sound of rigs working through the night. "You didn't just sell the land, Cammy. You sold me. You sold every family that depends on these jobs, and now they're threatening my boy." She took a step back, tears starting to fall. "I didn't know they would go that far. I swear, I can help you fix it. I still have copies of everything." For a second, the old connection flickered between them. Then Tommy's eyes hardened. "Too late for fixes. You started it. Now tell me everything. Who, what, and where. Every name, every dollar. If you hold anything back, I'll make sure the desert swallows you whole." Cammy nodded quickly, fear winning over everything else. She started talking fast, spilling names of executives, account numbers, secret meetings in Houston hotels. Tommy listened without interrupting, memorizing every word. But even as she talked, he felt eyes on them. A black SUV with tinted windows had just pulled into the far end of the parking lot. The tension snapped like a dry branch. 2 men stepped out, suits that looked too clean for this part of Texas. One reached inside his jacket. Tommy moved faster than Cammy expected, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind a row of parked cars. "Stay down," he growled. Gunshots cracked through the early morning air, sharp, deliberate. Bullets shattered glass and punched holes in metal. Tommy returned fire with the pistol he kept under his seat, not to kill, but to drive them back. Cammy screamed, covering her head. The SUV backed out fast, tires squealing as it disappeared down the road. Breathing hard, Tommy looked at Cammy, who was shaking on the ground beside him. "They're cleaning up loose ends. You're next if you don't help me take them down." She nodded, tears mixing with dust on her face. "I'll do whatever you want. Just keep me alive." Tommy helped her up, but there was no warmth in his touch. The sun was fully up now, painting the motel in harsh light. The war had moved from papers and deals to real bullets, and Tommy knew this was only the middle of the storm.